Hey guys, it's Cece, or it's Editing Cece. Welcome to part 2 of my Reading the Raven Cycle in 2 days vlog. Like I said in my previous vlog, I decided over the course of editing that it was going to be 2 vlogs, so that's why I'm here. I am going to start out by talking about Blue Lily, Lily Blue, which I am beyond thrilled to share some of my discussion about because it is a book I love so much. I started reading this at just about the same time I started reading on day 1 of my rereading the Raven Cycle plans. If you didn't watch part 1, you should probably go watch it. I'm probably going to reference it a bunch over the course of this vlog. But with that intro out of the way, I am going to cut back to previous CC giving you an intro of Blue Lily, Lily Blue. I hope you enjoyed this vlog. And now that it is about 2:40, I am going to start reading Blue Lily, Lily Blue. Yay! Which is my favorite book in the series. And it's time for everyone to acknowledge their trauma and learn to be good friends. And for Gansey to share how traumatized he is and for everyone to understand that. And it's time for the courthouse scene, which has reduced me to tears every time I've read it. Let's go Blue Lily, Lily Blue. Okay, I forgot the fact that I've been reading the opening paragraphs of this every time I start a new book, so let's read the first couple paragraphs. Prologue. Above. Persephone stood on the bare mountaintop, her ruffled ivory dress whipping around her legs, her masses of white blonde curls streaming behind her. She was gauzy, immaterial, something blown between these boulders and caught upon one of them. The wind was fierce up here with no trees to block it. The world below was gloriously autumnal. Adam Parrish stood beside her with his hands shoved into the pockets of his grease-stained cargo pants. He looked tired, but his eyes were clear, better than when she'd seen him last. Because Persephone was only interested in important things, she hadn't considered her own age in a long time. But it struck her, as she looked at him, that he was quite new. That raw expression, that youthful hunch of his shoulders, the frantic sprawl of the energy inside him. Yay! Happy 3:30! I'm on just about page 50 of Blue Lily, Lily Blue. And every time I'm not sure if, like, the same overpowering feeling of love is going to overtake me when I read this book, and every time I'm overcome again by how much I love this book so immediately. I think it's because the cave scene happens so early on, and I always think it's gonna take longer, but that scene is so essential to me in understanding how much all of them mean to each other already. From how much they all are emphasizing how much they love Gansey, how they would be incomplete without him, to Ronan immediately grabbing Blue when he sees that something bad is going to happen. He immediately protects her. I love that scene so much. It's one of my favorites of the series. And then you also have all of them having sort of this uncomplicated, easy relationship when they go and pick up Mallory from the airport. That Adam says, Ronan, don't be a shitbag, and then immediately afterwards Blue says, Ronan, don't be a shitbag, and they all just get to laugh and enjoy themselves and feel powerful and loved and seen. And I think that that is my favorite element of this book. Maybe it's because of, like, some innate desire that I have, that, like, being understood has always been my definition of love, and so this book is so much about being understood, about being seen, and about being known, and that just rings true to me in a very particular way that the other books don't quite reach, but I love it. I don't know what I'm gonna do when I get to the courtroom scene. I'm already upset thinking about it. I spend this entire book building up to that scene because I know it's gonna knock me on my ass. I love it. I love it. I'm gonna go make another cup of coffee. It is now 5:30, so I know that I missed an update, but this book just hits different, and I didn't want to stop reading it because, bold statement, bold claim, this might be my favorite book ever written. Like, I'm not saying my favorite book ever written besides a Harry Potter book. This might be my favorite book of all time. It means more to me than I can possibly ever say, and it means more to me than so many other books that I call my favorites. Like, thinking about this book makes me emotional. I was talking about this a bit in my previous update, that, like, the best way I can explain this book is that there is this intense longing within me that I think many people share to be known, to be seen. And to a certain extent, all of the characters have that in this series. They all want to know each other better. Blue even has a moment in this book where she's yelling at Orla, and she thinks about the fact that it's not just that she's in love with her Raven boys, it's that they're all in love with one another, and they're all so desperate to understand each other. So it's there, but it's there most strongly for Gansey, in my opinion. It's there in his desperation, it's in his car, it's in his journal, it's in his home. And Maggie Stiefvater places so much emphasis on, if she's ever describing a place, if she's ever describing an object, she's really describing a person. And I think that that comes through so strongly for Gansey, because no one can see him past his veneer. And I think the person who, like, is true to this theme secondarily to Gansey is Adam. Adam, who is so desperate to be seen on the outside what he feels on the inside, which is the same as Gansey's longing, but he knows that his friends see him as more than that. It's the outside world that Adam wants to feel like he's understood by, he's seen by. Gansey doesn't even feel understood by his friends. It's why he constantly pushes these different versions of himself. It's why he hates himself at times, because he just wants someone to understand that he's more than his family. And it's why the tragedy of his first line, at least as a ghost, is so tragic. Gansey, that's all there is. Because I can't imagine anything more tragic to Gansey than being nothing but his last name. That's like a completely unrelated, different update, but every time I read that line, it strikes me again that would be Gansey's greatest tragedy. Because that's his name, but he's so much more than that. Literally, I'm being so ridiculous. Neville Longbottom is my favorite Harry Potter character, and I don't even get emotional talking about him. Because Gansey. I think the other reason this book is my favorite, if we're gonna try to dial it back a notch with what's happening right now, is that it has all of my favorite side characters. It has my favorite villain, the Green Mantles. It's so funny because I think some people think Mr. Grey is the villain of the Dream Thieves, but I think Kavinsky's the villain of the Dream Thieves. The Grey Man is just sort of an odd side character, just like every book has kind of an odd side character that they add in. But this book has Mallory, who is my favorite side character, because he is the only one old enough and well-adjusted enough to explain trauma to people, to these teenagers who don't understand trauma. I love Jesse Ditley because he is loud and wonderful, and he's like a perfect friend for Blue. I love the Green Mantles because I love their chaotic, sociopathic way of doing things. I continually love Mr. Grey and his developing relationship with Blue, and this is the book that introduces Henry, who I fucking love. I love Henry. I love Henry because he's a great character, but also because he sees Gansey. He sees Gansey more immediately than any of the rest of them do, and that makes me emotional in my heart, or whatever. It's fine. So I'm on page 175 of Blue Lily, Lily Blue. Brian remarked earlier that it seems like I'm getting through this a lot faster than I'm getting through the other books, and it's because I don't want to stop reading. It's because I live and breathe this story. I live and breathe this world of characters slowly being known, of Ronan slowly sharing his secrets with Adam. Oh god, I just got two of the best Ronan and Adam chapters. First of all, the scene where Ronan storms in. He's like, I'm gonna go flirt with a boy I like today. Okay, how am I gonna flirt with a boy? Right, so I'm gonna sneak into where he works, scare the shit out of him with a thing I pulled from my nightmares, insult him, leave, and then also leave behind an incredibly sentimental and thoughtful gift that shows I know and understand him and I'll never bring it up again. Flirting achieved. What a fucking disaster. But then on top of that, you've got the first time Ronan invites Adam to the Barns, and again, places are people, and so whenever Ronan shows anybody the Barns, it's him saying, this is me, this is understand who I am, understand where I came from, I am showing you my heart by showing you my home. And maybe that's something that Adam is only starting to understand, but he does understand. He understands how to be soft with Ronan when he is finally speaking truths, and they get that line, I hear if you want magic done, he said, you ask a magician, which is like, just marry each other already. I'm gonna have a heart attack. The other reason that this book makes me emotional, this is gonna be the longest update in the world, and it's just, every paragraph should start with, you know what makes me emotional? The goddamn hats in this book get to me. Like, how unfair is that? That Maggie Stiefvater has the ability to make me care about this straight-ass relationship more than I care about almost any other relationship in fiction. And I think it's because Maggie Stiefvater knows how to write tenderness in a way that makes my heart burn and burst and light on fire, and it's fine. And it's not just this book, it's every book of hers that I've ever read. It's Scorpio Races, it's even the Wolves of Mercy Falls series. She knows how to make a relationship so tender that touching fingertips is like a shot to the heart, because so much emotion is built up around it. And so we keep having these emotional phone calls between Blue and Gansey, where Blue calls Gansey and he's like, hey, here are some facts about ducks, and she's like, okay, bye then. But you know that that was like a deeply romantic phone call that they're both going to remember, and now they'll both be able to sleep? Like, fuck me. How the I love this book. I don't understand people who don't like this book, because people who argue that nothing happens in this book make me want to cry. I struggle so much to understand, because every interaction that happens in this is so meaningful to me, and I think it comes back to the fact that I would rather read a book that's just about character than a book that has any element of plot. And so even though this is the shortest book, more happens for me in this book than any other, because more happens between each character in this book than any other. Oh my god, okay, was this sentimental enough? I don't know if this got out all my feelings. I could talk for an hour nonstop about how much I love this book, evidenced by the fact that immediately before filming this update, I just had a very similar conversation with Brian where I struggled to put into words why this book means so much to me, and like got emotional about it. I'm gonna be in Southern California in a month, and I don't have the money, but I also very much want to make getting a tattoo happen. I don't know what I'm gonna do. God damn this book. Hi, it's 8:30. I don't remember the last time I updated you, so I will just update you with what's happened, and you'll know because you just watched the last update. I read some more, I ate some dinner, and I watched some Star Trek Voyager. That's what I've accomplished. I desperately needed a break from reading words on a page, so we watched 2 episodes of Voyager and bought tickets to go see a movie tonight. I think the most important thing that's occurred since I last updated as far as reading is that they have now found Gwenllian. I believe that's how you pronounce it. But to be fair, even the characters in the book struggle with pronouncing that name. So I am basing that purely on how I believe they pronounce it in the Raven Girls podcast. And I know they use the pronunciations from the audiobooks. So, kind of third-hand pronunciation there, but close enough. One of my favorite things ever that Ronan says in the history of this book is when they when they discover the tomb, they open it, and Gwenllian is inside, and she moves a little bit, and Ronan specifically says, Jesus shit, Mary fuck. I think about it all the time. It's one of those times where you read his cursing and you understand why in book 1 Adam has the ridiculously bisexual disaster thought that Ronan swearing at him is a bit poetic. Because it's like, oh, wow, he really did think to put those words together in that order. There is a kind of poetry in that amount of profanity. Also, it makes me so sad because Blue just met Henry for the first time, and on the one hand, it's sad that Blue's first interaction with Henry is so negative, but on the other hand, she is currently in love with a boy who, during their first meeting, she thought he was accusing her of being a prostitute. So, like, in the long term, it seems like most of these Raven boys have a spectacularly bad first interaction with Blue, and Henry is just keeping with tradition. Still, it makes me sad to see her being mean about Henry, because her and Gansey and Henry being a three-legged creature is very important to me. Three-legged? Three-headed. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying.
3 legs.
3 legs. They each lose one before the end. Maggie refuses to confirm that they are all 3 in a relationship, but I also refuse to listen to Maggie Stiefvater saying anything outside of these books. Because Gansey, Henry, and Blue is a very important relationship. And I think it's fitting that both of Blue's boyfriends would have disastrous first introductions to her. I am on page 232, so I'm going to keep reading until we need to leave in like an hour, a little under an hour, to go see a movie. So we're just about to leave for our movie, so I thought I would give you a short update and say the only thing that gives the Dream Thieves a run for its money in terms of homoeroticism is the fact that Adam has the thought maybe there were 2 gods in this church about Adam before he truly even has any concept that he might have feelings for Ronan. Because all these boys do is say and think very gay thoughts about each other. And it's remarkable that some of them actually are gay, but they just don't realize it yet. There are 2 gods in this church is the most dramatic bisexual thing to think in the world. Adam is such a disaster. Like, a disaster I support wholeheartedly, and only a disaster in terms of attraction. He's not a disaster in other things, but I think that his disastrous interactions as far as attraction go stand out from the crowd. I'm not going to do a 12:30 update because I haven't read anything yet, so I'm going to read and then update you at 1:30. We just got back from seeing The Current War, which I've got to admit I've never seen a movie with a bigger hard-on for Thomas Edison. Would you?
I would agree.
Yeah. That's the biggest takeaway. And that movie had a severe hard-on for Thomas Edison. Oh my god. A severe hard-on for Thomas Edison.
They should say that, like, before plays, like elocution lessons.
Yeah.
A severe hard-on for Thomas Edison.
I almost fucked it up again.
You did.
It is a little after 1:30 in the morning, and I did it! I timed it out right. This update is happening at the right time. I finished reading Blue Lily, Lily Blue. Essential updates. I still cried through the courtroom scene. I am, and always will be, the courtroom scene's bitch. It's somehow the culmination of every single thing I love about the series and every single thing I love about fiction. in a way that makes my heart hurt so much, but also it fills it with joy so much that it can't be contained in my body anymore, and I just sob. I feel about it the same way I feel about, I'm gonna draw a comparison to another odd thing here. Stay with me. The courtroom scene reminds me of Love, Simon. Not Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda, specifically the movie Love, Simon. Because there's a scene where Jennifer Garner, who plays Simon's mom, she says to him, you get to exhale now, Simon. And every time I have seen that movie, I exhale during that line into just like broken sobs. That line undoes me more than pretty much anything else in fiction. And it undid me the first couple of times that I saw the movie, and then I saw that movie with my mom next to me. And when Jennifer Garner says, you get to exhale now, Simon, and I started crying, my mom grabbed my hand and she kissed the back of it. And so now, on top of the really intense gay emotions I already had about that scene, I have even more intense emotional attachment to that scene. Because I was seeing a gay movie with my mom, and she was expressing this sort of unconditional love, and it was a lot, and it's hard for me to talk about without getting emotional. And that's how I feel about the courtroom scene, because it is a striking moment, a moment when you realize that I don't know what else Adam and Gansey could ever have done to show Adam how much they loved him, and it is such a significant turning point in each of their lives, because it isn't just that they care about Adam, they ran there for him. Something about that desperate need to be there for someone that they care about, to prove that they care about him, undoes me in every conceivable way. It's weird sometimes. It's been weird in this video. I didn't know if I was going to talk about this, but apparently I am. I was worried about this reread because if you've been watching my channel for, longer than a year, you probably know that my emotions about the series were previously pretty tied to someone I was in a relationship with. Someone who I felt knew me, who made me feel seen until I had distance and I could look back and understand that I wasn't known. I was shown the ways I could be acceptable, and so I conformed to those ways. And I was really worried that reading this series would lose some of its magic because I had previously tied so much of my relationship to it with this person who I loved so much. I was worried it would hurt more, but it turns out that there's sort of a lack of power that she has over me, and it's comforting to know. It's one of those things where I don't know if I would have known until I reread this series how little control she has over me now. So I don't know, maybe this series is remarkable for that, for holding my hand through both sides of that relationship. This is my favorite book in the world. It's my favorite book in the world. I don't know if I have anything deep or meaningful to say about it other than that, other than just relating my personal experience in halting ways, because this book means more to me than I can put into words, because I don't know if I'll ever have the language that I need to fully state how I feel about the world. It's an issue I have that I understand how I feel, but I can never say it the way I want to. I can never phrase it the way I want to. And people tell me I'm good at phrasing things. That was one of the first things that Brian ever said to me, that I'm good at telling a story. I'm good at explaining myself. And it's one of those things that other people see in me that I've never seen in me. Maybe that's part of my narrative journey, that I see those things in other people and not myself, but it's this halting, stumbling awkwardness is the only way that I can even kind of convey what Blue Lily, Lily Blue means to me. I also think that this is a meaningful book about death, about knowing your friends, and about understanding that humans cannot be parsed and put into little boxes. They are infinite puzzle boxes that you will continue to solve for the entire length of time that you know them, and for all the time after that. So much about this book is about how all of these people have had versions of their friends in their minds, and all of a sudden they find a new version, and they thought they knew everything there was to know about their friend, but here's this new side, this completely unexpected element. And one of the wonders about friendship is that they can take this element and slowly work it into their vision of their friends. They can slowly continue to untie the knots that make up other human beings. And friendship is the joy of untying those knots and realizing that maybe your friend isn't who you originally thought, but you can't wait to find out more. You can't wait to uncover more. It feels weird talking about this book. It feels too weird talking about Blue Lily, Lily Blue. So I'm gonna stop for now. I love it. I love it in a way that is not possible to contain within myself. So, moving on, it's time to read The Raven King. I really love The Raven King. The way I would rank these books is that Blue Lily, Lily Blue is my favorite, then The Dream Thieves, then The Raven King, then The Raven Boys. So this is in the bottom half of my rankings, but I still love it. Like, I love all these books. And I'm going to start reading it tonight and get through as much as I can and then finish the rest tomorrow. But because it is time to read a new book, it is time for me to read you a new opening paragraph, one that makes me deeply emotional, but I will only read some of it. Prologue. Richard Gansey III had forgotten how many times he had been told he was destined for greatness. He was bred for it, nobility and purpose coded in both sides of his pedigree. His mother's father had been a diplomat, an architect of fortunes. His father's father had been an architect, a diplomat of styles. His mother's mother had tutored the children of European princesses. His father's mother had built a girls' school with her own inheritance. The Ganseys were courtiers and kings, and when there was no castle to invite them, they built one. He was a king. God. Okay, that's it. I'm done. It's 2:30 in the morning, so it's probably bad that I'm out here still, and so is Brian, but it's a Friday. Well, now it's a Saturday. It's fine. Because my last update took so long, I haven't had, like, my full hour to read. I've just been reading in bits, so I'm only about 34 pages in, but thought I would share my thoughts from the beginning of this book. The full life reading of the women of 300 Foxway is a scene I really love. I think it is all of the best parts of 300 Foxway and the best parts of those women, but I'm always stuck. I'm always stuck on the she's that they're guessing about at the end of the chapter. And I wrote down my guesses for each one of these, but it feels like I forget the plot of this book every time I read it because I can never answer these questions. Where they're all looking at stuff and there's a, does this mean she's still alive? Tapping on the Queen of Swords. Oh, the Queen of Swords might refer to someone specific, but I don't remember. So I wrote Piper or Neve next to that one because it feels like Piper and Neve are the two they don't know about. Then there's, does this mean she's going to leave? To which my guess is Blue. I think that they always knew that Blue would be leaving them. And that's kind of the whole point of this book. They're going to talk about it soon. But the one I always get stuck on is, does this mean she's coming back? And that one I can't determine. That's the one I can't solve. Maybe it's Neve. Maybe they don't think she's dead and it's just that they're thinking she's coming back, but I can't remember. So if I don't have it solved by the end of this vlog, and knowing me, I probably won't because I'm very bad about remembering these specifics early on, There's just something so dreamlike about these books that makes me forget to look for things I should be looking for. But if I haven't figured it out by the end of this vlog, put your guesses or the answers that you know for sure down in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts about the different she's and the different things that you think the women of 300 Foxway could be predicting in that big life reading. I'm going to read a little bit more, and then I'm going to go to sleep, because this book is going to take me about 5 hours to read, so I'm going to read a bit more tonight, and then focus the rest of my energy on tomorrow. I'm in bed. I'm about to do some very intense sleeping until I wake up tomorrow and read for 5 hours, and then I will be done with this project. I think it's so interesting how certain lines that are so iconic from this series strike me differently at different points. I think that is a thing that all good fiction has. Lines that you understand differently at different points in your life. Character motivations that you understand differently at different points in your life. In general, I think that is the thing that I think is so remarkable about fiction. It's why I reread The Giver every few years, because it's been with me in more moments in my life than any other piece of fiction. At least fiction that's written down. And so I think it's interesting that this will be the third time that I've read The Raven King. There's the line when Blue is so horribly sad, and the women of 300 Foxway are telling her that it's okay to leave home. It's not a bad thing to leave home. And Kala tells her that, or Mara tells her that they see her out in the world exploring. And Kala says, trees in your eyes, stars in your heart. And the first time I read it, I thought it was nice. And the second time I read it, it destroyed me. And today I read it, and it just sort of made me ache for a time when a line like that had destroyed me. The soft way in which Mara tells Blue it's not a bad thing to want to leave home. It strikes me differently because it's a conversation I've had with my own mom. It's not a bad thing that I wanted to go to school somewhere outside of Utah. It's not a bad thing that I wanted to live a few states away. And it took a lot of work to accept that that was the case. So that line is gonna always have different meanings for me at different moments. And this time it just sort of made me... It just filled me with affection for the person that I was. Oh, she knows I'm upset, so she's trying to climb on me. It filled me with affection for the person that I was when I sobbed through reading that scene. Because she was a different person than I am now. Not a better or worse person necessarily, just a different person. God, this book opens up like all the feelings for me. There's something so remarkable about the way this book is written, and it's very intentional. It's very aware of how it's written, I think, which is something that some people didn't like about it. Leia. That it seems very aware of its own repetition in a way that the other books in the series aren't quite. They feel mistakenly magical. This one feels intentionally magical, but it's something I really like about it. So I have a lot of thoughts, and it takes me a bit longer to read through because there's just a lot happening in this book that I think is very interesting. But now I'm going to go to sleep for a while, and then wake up tomorrow and finish reading this book. Hello and good morning. It is a little after 10:30, so I am awake, and I'm going to start reading the rest of The Raven King. I have until today at 3:30 to finish reading it, but I have about 5 hours till then, and it's supposed to take me a little under 5 hours to finish reading. I just made myself some coffee in my Women's and Gender Studies Drew University mug, and now I'm going to sit down and start reading. It's 11:30 and I love Henry Chang. That's your important update. I love Henry. It's so interesting because a lot of the fandom, doesn't acknowledge Henry. When they do Gansey fan art, they always leave out Henry. When they do posts about the whole group, they leave out Henry. And I know that Henry didn't join their quest until the final book, but, the affection with which Henry is written makes my heart burn in the best possible way because I love him. And so whenever I see posts that are about everybody but Henry, I'm full of this righteous anger because what about Henry? What about Henry? I just read the scene at the toga party, which is such a lovely scene. It makes me feel so emotional because Henry and Gansey and Blue are all obsessed with each other and they're all in love with each other. We haven't even gotten to the bit where Gansey's going to think Gansey knew Henry was right by the zing of feeling in his heart, which is like the most extra line ever written, but I love it so much that I think about it sometimes just at random. I will say that, like, my love for Henry occasionally tempers my love for Ronan and Adam because they are so, like, fucking awful to Henry. Specifically, they're racist to Henry, and that's one of those, like, character flaws that's unexcusable. One of those things where if you're going to talk about having a character you love, you also have to be able to acknowledge their faults. And God, Adam and Ronan and the way that they treat Henry is despicable. And it makes my love for them just a little lessened because of it. And I love the scene where Adam is scrying into the headlights and Ronan and Adam find excuses to touch one another's hands. And there's that line, the ocean burned, because Ronan just gets to touch Adam's hand. I'm also absolutely furious that we didn't know until book 4 that Gansey has dimples. Like, that's gonna haunt me every single time that I read 3 books not knowing Gansey has dimples, and it turns out he has dimples, and like, stab me, why don't ya? I think those are my thoughts for now. Like, I've just been underlining and highlighting a lot of things, and drawing hearts and stars, cause I love them, and it makes me really emotional. Oh, I remember, I wanted to talk about, Mr. Gray saying, I've been thinking a lot about Adam Parrish and his band of merry men, which I think is such an interesting line, that Mr. Gray shows up and he's just like, I think Adam Parrish is the leader of the group. And then Mara has to be like, I'm pretty sure Gansey is the male protagonist of this series. And Mr. Gray has to be like, it's an interesting opinion, but I politely disagree. Because it's so interesting to see how Gansey is the one who, on the outside, it seems like everyone's taking their cues from him, but Adam is the reason so many different things happen, that it makes sense from, like, a pragmatic, sensible perspective that someone inside the situation would see Adam Parrish as the leader. He's the one who made the decision to give himself over to Cabe's water. He is the one where, when someone asks for an idea, he provides it. Like, he causes so many things to happen. And so for a hitman, for a man who does things logically and then makes things happen, it makes sense that he would think Adam Parrish is actually the leader of the group. I just think it's a fascinating scene. I'm so tired. I am loving reading this, but I'm also very excited that I get to be done reading this today, because I want to rest and not read a book for like a week. I skipped an hour's update because I was distracted and I didn't read much, and thus I did not have much to say. But now I am on page 255. Honestly, one of the things that distracted me earlier was that I got on Twitter for a bit, which I shouldn't have done, but I did. And oddly enough, timing-wise, Maggie Stiefvater had just posted this blog post about her specific health struggles, and specifically her health struggles when she was working on writing this book. And it was incredibly fascinating because I think it added context to a lot of the things about this book. It added detail. I knew she was sick when she wrote The Raven King. I know that she's been sick for a while, but God, reading that was horrible. And I think a little bit of the horror of that, of the thing that she was going through, of this thing that she couldn't understand, eked its way into this book. It's sort of horrifying. It's scarier than any of the other books. It reads sometimes like a horror novel, and I think that it's reflective of a particular mental state that it was written in. And I treasure this book for that. I don't know. Someone asked on Twitter this horribly rude question about whether or not Maggie would ever rewrite The Raven King, seeing as she was sick when she wrote it originally. Oh god, it frustrates me to see people taking creativity out of a context like that, to just say the context was bad, so the book was bad, fix it. Maybe it's the English degree person in me, maybe it's the fact that I prefer reading things as they exist within the time they were written, but I can't imagine taking a book out of that context. I can't imagine what this book would be out of that context. This is coming from a person who, I wrote my thesis, my honors thesis, on feminist fiction and how feminist fiction of particular time periods influenced real feminism and how real feminism influenced feminist fiction. So, like, it was all very focused on how fiction emerges from a particular context. So maybe that's a passion of mine. Maybe that's why I get frustrated when people suggest that books would be written differently at different times, because of course they would. Of course they would be vastly different, but why not celebrate the things that make this book original because of the context it emerged from? That could all have been nonsense. Let me know what you think. I just read Adam and Ronan's first kiss, which is a scene I love so dearly. It's something so magical the way it's written. Ronan's description of an oil spill to Adam's description of knowing a storm is coming and letting it soak him. It's so powerfully good. I also got to read the scene of Henry taking Gansey into a hole in the ground and having them confront their worst fears, because this book is about confronting particular traumas and creating new traumas. And I love Henry. I love Henry. I love Henry. I love Henry. It also makes for great funny scenes, like Blue waiting to get on the bus and having Henry pull into the lot and everyone thinking she's a hypocrite, only for the moment he drives out of the lot for Gansey to pull into the lot and she gets in his car, and how she'll never be able to save face with her classmates again. It's the funniest scene. This is probably a weird update. This entire vlog has probably been weird updates. I'm going to continue working on reading because I have 2 hours left. It's so weird. Like, I have a hard enough time talking about Blue Lily, Lily Blue, because my feelings and thoughts are so big that I have a hard time putting them into words. This book is difficult to talk about because so much happens that I don't even take notes. You know, I take notes about all the other books. This one I just speed through kind of without thought, because there's just so much going on. A couple of standout thoughts could be the fact that clearly Adam has been thinking about kissing Ronan for long enough that after they kiss for the first time, and after they kiss for the second time, he's immediately like, okay, take off your shirt so I can look at your tattoo. It's very perfectly it's very perfectly Adam, that he spent this time being like, I don't know about feelings, I don't know if I'm capable of them, and then a boy he likes kisses him once and he's like, well, I guess it's time to look at his tattoo and then maybe we'll get married in the spring, you know? It's just very extra and over dramatic of him, and it's perfect, in my opinion. Also, I think one of the best builds of this entire series is the build to Blue being a tree light. I feel like that is done so spectacularly well that every time I reread the books and reread certain scenes, I'm shocked that I didn't think of it, even though it's completely illogical to read scenes over and over and be like, you know, I bet this person is part tree. Every time I reread the series, I'm like, she talks about trees enough times. It's remarkable that your brain never made the jump. I think at this point I'm just talking about characters other than Gansey, because this is where it gets truly rough for Gansey. This is where he thinks he is alone when he is not, and you kind of truly understand the depth of Gansey's self-loathing. And that's always a rough time for me, because I see so much of myself in Gansey, but it's time. He's gone off on his own, assuming that everyone else has just been going along with him up to this point and not fully understanding that they would all give their lives for him. And it's time to finally let him see that his friends would do anything for him. And it's a very important moment, and I will update you when I'm done with this book. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. It is after 3:30 right now, but I did finish my book in time. Honestly, after I finished reading The Raven King, I was so exhausted, I couldn't even process formulating words, so I just sort of was on the couch for a bit. While YouTube was on in the background, I played games on my phone. I fully needed my brain to turn off for a while before I could speak again, because this was an exhausting process. I'm glad I did it, but it was exhausting. You should all probably know that when in my patron Discord chat, I was like, so I'm gonna try to read The Raven Cycle in 24 hours. Everyone was like, what are you doing? You don't have to do that. Please sleep, please drink water, please eat food. And I was like, it'll be fine. And then the next day, I was like, it's gonna be 48 hours and I haven't slept much. They were like, don't do this. So, like, at least my patrons are keeping an eye out for me. But I did it. I read The Raven Cycle in 2 days. Fuck yes. I finished reading The Raven King. It's interesting. I didn't cry reading The Raven King this time. I said this in earlier updates, I always cry at different moments, at different points, especially when I'm rereading favorite series. So I'm always curious what I'll cry at next time I read, you know? I don't know, I feel like this book goes so quickly, there's so much happening that I don't have time to stop and process the things that make me emotional. And someday I really want to force myself to read this book slowly, to go through each chapter slowly and make sure I'm not missing stuff, because I feel like all 3 times I've read this book, I've read it in a blur, and there's probably a better way. I definitely cried the first time I read this at the loss of Ronan's mother. There's something about that scene that hurts me so much. I mentioned the second time I read this, I cried at Trees in Your Eyes, Stars in Your Heart. This time I felt distant, but I was making some notes, such as the fact that, when Gansey is underground and he thinks he has to go and seek his king alone, I think that that is very much his courtroom moment. It means incredibly different things, and I don't think it means as much because that scene with Adam is a very particular type of bravery that he's exhibiting and a very particular type of love that he didn't even think he was capable of receiving. So that one always stands out to me because it's a remarkable moment of friendship and a remarkable moment of bravery as someone who is finally going to be able to take steps to establish that someone in his life has been doing something wrong since he was a child. But I do think that Gansey needed sort of that same moment in reverse, that he always knew he would go to the aid of any of his friends no matter what, but he still had so much self-loathing that he truly didn't think that he was worth anyone doing anything for him. It, like, makes me more emotional to think about than to read that scene, because I read so much into Gansey, but that moment where they all show up and each of them says something that won't hurt Gansey and Henry's there with them, is a deeply emotional scene, so I know I cried reading it before, but not this time. Maybe it was exhaustion. I'm still not sure who the 3 she's were early on. And I do think that this book has some issues. There's no way around it. This book has issues. Timeline stuff doesn't make sense. Blue skipped a year. There are honestly plot holes throughout the series, such as the fact that Adam and Blue don't know each other, and there's kind of no way that they wouldn't know each other. There's kind of no way that Calla wouldn't know about Gansey prior to the series beginning. This book has some issues in terms of theme and in terms of villains. It's very scattered. Piper is a very odd villain, and the build up to the selling of the demon is very strange. It doesn't make a ton of narrative sense, and then it's over so quickly you're not quite sure why it happened. So I think this is the book I can poke the most holes in, and there's always going to be an issue for me with that. So I'm not sure. I don't know if The Raven King is... It might be my least favorite. It might be my least favorite of the bunch, just because it's the one I can poke the most obvious holes in, and that always kind of bothers me as a reader. But I still really love it. And now I am ready to read Call Down the Hawk for the second time on November 5th. My pre-order is in order. It will be here, and then I'll be getting a second copy as well that I will also be keeping. And I will be able to do a reading vlog dedicated solely to rereading that book. And hopefully that vlog gets to be a little bit more analytical than a first read-through vlog would have been. Because my first read-through, I was so caught up in just tracking plot that I couldn't pay a lot of attention to themes, and I couldn't pay a lot of attention to foreshadowing elements. So I'm really hoping that my Call Down the Hawk vlog can be excitement, because I finally get to talk about all the shit that happens in that book, but also I can talk a little bit more in depth about, like, analytical thoughts. This was probably a very long vlog, so thank you for watching. Thank you for hopefully enjoying the Raven cycle along with me. I know this is a series I love, and I know this is a series a lot of you have read or said that you've read because I've talked about it so highly in the previous couple of years, and it's so loved in the book community. So I'm glad that I just got to spend a very long video loving on these books, and I can't wait to love on them in future videos as well. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna go crash for many, many hours, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!